As we start 2026, I wanted to briefly reflect on the conversation that shaped corporate venturing insider in 2025. This isn't a highlight reel, it's a collection of judgments. How experienced leaders think about decisions, leadership, trust, impact, and long term value when the stakes are real. Let's get into it.
And so when Apple set up this venture capital fund, it said, we're not going to make that mistake. And they set up a venture capital unit, essentially. I mean, it wasn't an independent fund, but they said, we're going to give you a lot of investment independence. We want you to make the best investments. We want you to behave like a venture capitalist. And we're not going to emphasize strategic returns, and we're going to measure you on IRR. We just want you to make really good deals, and we want you to get deep into the venture capital community. And so they set this up and gave them quite a bit of leeway. And then they started making investments, and literally, I think it was like the third or fourth deal that they looked at was a complicated deal. And it wasn't a straight venture capital investment, and they ended up buying a small company, and the company was doing a number of products, and it was all a mess. And they said, well, we're not going to look at strategic interest of Apple. We're going to think, what is best? Where is the highest value of these assets? And they decided that the company needed to be split in two. And one of them became Claris. It's not super well known, but it was a subsidiary, wholly owned subsidiary of Apple that was developing, I can't even remember exactly what. And the other thing that really didn't fit in was this weird product that was called PowerPoint. And they didn't know what to do with this thing. And they just sold it to the highest bidder, who was Microsoft. And so Apple had control over PowerPoint, sold it to Microsoft to help them complete this Microsoft suite. And, for the next decade, Apple struggled. So it was a monumental strategic mistake. But
Whoa.
it was the mandate of the venture capital arm.
I know, but this is like do no harm, and here it's like do harm to your mothership.
Yeah, I mean, it was, the mothership bought into the strategy until they realized this isn't working. Um, to make the long story short, the venture capital did extremely well. It had, I don't remember the exact numbers, they're in the case, but I believe they had IRRs over 80%. So these were good venture capital investments, great returns.
Yeah.
And the board just, cut it after 5 years. They said, this is ridiculous. We're making 80% IRR on tiny sums of money, and we're giving away things like PowerPoint, where the strategic value is 100 times whatever IRR we're making on, a small amount.
And I want to talk a little bit more about being present because that's something I learned from meeting President Bill Clinton. Of course, when President Clinton walks into the room, even with 20 people, everybody wants to talk to him, right? So everybody's trying to get his time and everybody's surrounding him. But what was so surprising is, he talks to everybody and he talked to me. And for the moment that he spent time with me, his eyes never left my face. And he was like that with everybody he spoke to. It doesn't matter who else is around, but when he speaks to you, nobody else matters around you, that his focus is completely on you. And it could be 3 minutes, 5 minutes, but I think that communicates the ultimate respect.
The term comes from Charlie Munger from Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's partner. And the idea behind it is that if you do your homework on a particular sector, if you do the hard research in an investment thesis area, you have a prepared mind with regard to what you're looking for. When I gave the 4 or 5 steps to develop an investment thesis, one of them was define the rubric or the criteria that would make a high quality investment well positioned to go after this value creation opportunity that you have a hypothesis about the future that is available. And so if you have that prepared mind, if you have those criteria and the rubric, and you're sitting with an entrepreneur, and in the course of a 45-minute meeting, they're checking all the boxes, you can turn to your partner and your partnership, and you can say, hey, look, remember this thesis we've talked about? Remember these criteria that we articulated? This individual founder checks all the boxes. We should absolutely do this investment. And it doesn't take very long to build that consensus or that high conviction. It also allows you to be efficient in your diligence. If you have a prepared mind, then you have access to the diligence resources and maybe a key nuanced insight as to the one or two things that need to be true for the diligence to come through. We often talk about not trying to boil the ocean with our diligence, but focusing on the one or two or three really salient issues that the decision and the investment hinge on that separate success versus failure. And with a prepared mind, you can be more efficient in diligencing those two or three key salient issues.
What would be good best practices for measuring impact?
So I can explain a bit how impact investors do it. So let's say that they invest in a company working on plant-based meat, which could be potentially an interesting topic for an investor. Then they say, okay, what can this company achieve in terms of impact? Well, the sort of idea behind companies working on plant-based meat would be that they're replacing consumption of meat, and then this would reduce CO2 emissions because, as you probably know, beef, is a big culprit when it comes to CO2 emissions. But of course, like, you're making certain assumptions. You want to understand who are going to be the buyers of this plant-based meat, because if it's going to be vegetarians, so they need to set up a system where eventually they would be able to collect the data on the customers so that they would have that evidence. So for the impact investor, then they have these conversations, with the investee, and they try to understand what is called a theory of change, which is really about how are you addressing a specific social or environmental challenge, through your intervention, as an entrepreneur, and how are you planning to, in some ways, address that problem, alleviate that problem, eventually eliminate that problem.
The best predictor of raising $1 million or more was the management team.
Okay.
But then the predictor of raising 10 million or more was the business. A really good founder can't fix a bad business, that the business mattered more.
I think it makes other institutional investors nervous when a strategic comes in and wants to acquire or is taking too much of a round. So we definitely don't do that. But I think just having a seat at the table with the board observer, having these, collaborations where we're helping them generate additional data, we're giving them access to our experts, we're trying to accelerate their time to market, makes us a pretty realistic, acquisition target for them. They're comfortable with us. They could see who they'd be working with already. So I think just having that relationship and being a good partner to them, if there was an opportunity and it made sense for LabCorp, we're already kind of in those conversations. And so that's why I think the board observer matters. We do have side letter language that I know our portfolio company legal teams don't love, but it's evolved over the years, and I think it's important. We never ask for first right of refusal or first right of negotiation. Again, those are terms that make other investors very nervous. But we do ask for notification rights. So just like, please, we do not want to wake up to a press release that you were acquired and acquired by a competitor, right? Like, and very unlikely to happen.
You don't want to do so.
Right, especially with long-term relationships and a board observer role and partnerships. But we just feel strongly about something like that.
And is that the same trait you saw in all of your other unicorns founders?
I think most all of them have this, but I just want to say something controversial. A lot of people ask, I teach at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, and they say, do you have to be an asshole to be a great CEO? A terrible person, a screamer? You do not.
Yeah.
Some of the best CEOs in the world, you might say, who? Reed Hastings at Netflix, one of the best executives I have ever seen. Jensen Huang, one of the best executives I've ever seen. And you would want these people to raise your children if something happened to you. They're also extraordinary human beings.
And very kind.
And very kind. You do not have to be flamboyant, vindictive. Separate that out altogether.
I really like that. That's a good golden nugget for everyone to listen to.
By the way, those people are going to be CEO for much longer than some of the other people.
But they also, the two you mentioned are very mission driven. This
Yes.
is their life, their life's mission.
Well, and this is the perplexing thing about Musk, because when I started, it was all about saving the planet from global warming and so on. I think somewhere along the way that mission was lost, and now Tesla's advocated to get rid of the solar tax credits or get rid of the EV credits, and many of us are feeling what happened to the green Tesla. Now we have a different Tesla.
It's no secret, being an entrepreneur and getting a successful startup to scale and up to a multi-million, multi-billion-dollar exit, it's hard work. It's really hard work. And a person has to be doing it for all the right reasons. They have to want to be doing it not because of the financial returns, but because they believe in the product, they believe in, and they have the right skill set. So that's one piece. And then they have to be able to build a team. So, I don't invest in the founder. I invest in the founder and the team. But you have to have the right team. You have to have the right team. And so it was super important for me to meet the team and to meet the founder and how do they, founder or founders, and how do they complement each other? How does the team work together? Because a single founder just can't, you have to have that mission-driven team.
What is a myth of your students believing something is true, and then when they go through your class, they're like, oh, wow, this is not what I thought?
That being a good VC is about picking really good investments. And while that is true, it's really important to source good investments, right? If you don't have good deal flow, you can be the best picker in the world. If you're picking amongst garbage, you're not going to get great stuff. And so the idea of this virtuous cycle of, source good deal flow, pick the best companies, and then really support your company's post-investment. And that virtuous cycle, I think people over-index diligence, and sourcing is such a misappreciated skill.
Part of our what we call it's basically the investment review document. We write postmortems, like pre-postmortems, what went wrong. Looking ahead 5 years.
I think pre-mortem is such a good idea. It's tough to do, but it's such a good discipline. Because if I think about venture capital, you have to have these two contradicting views in your mind. Everything that can go wrong and what you can mitigate, and how big it could get. So it's a kind of pessimist and optimist type at the same time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, and you have to be very careful that you don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Right.
I think the funniest place you see it is everybody who invests at whatever stage they invest at, they think everyone after them is like shooting fish in a barrel, and everyone before them is like lost their mind and is randomly picking, right? It's hard where they are. After it's easy, before it's like stupid, no one can do it. And this is a famous idea. But the thing that people miss in that statement is it's all in the price.
Yes.
And that's true everywhere. So if you're doing this round, yes, you have more information than doing the round before, but that information is all in the price.
Yeah.
And if you do the latest next round, well, that's just all in the price. Making the decision just as difficult because it's at that price should I do it? It is a part of the price, unless you have some good reason to think it isn't, that you have some window or reason to believe that it's not in the price. And that's the most important part. It's not just like it's cheaper. It's no. I have an insight here. It is too cheap, right? Or it's cheaper, but it's too expensive. We actually shouldn't be doing it. It's cheaper, but not cheap enough.
I remember the first deal I worked on was cratering, and I felt like everybody was looking at me like, we're all like doing deals and they're going public. What's wrong with you? Right. But shortly after my deal collapsed, a bunch of other deals started collapsing and the stock market obviously crashed. And I remember Les saying, steady as she goes. Just don't panic, steady as she goes. He was just a brilliant sort of in how he thought about like portfolio management in terms of like diversification. I thought was really good. And as leading your group, you may start a strategy today, but it takes almost a decade before you know if that was the right call.
We changed our approach, and we started with the needs of the business units. That means that we went into our business units. We tried to understand if there is a challenge that can't be solved internally and can't be solved by an existing supplier. And that was actually the sweet spot where we knew, okay, that's actually where a startup can provide real benefit. And the process to select the best startup is actually collaborating with the business unit very closely. So we always start with the challenge. We define the challenge as concrete, as precise as possible. And then we go out and our team scouts for startups that might solve exactly that challenge. And if you do that with, let's say, some technical KPIs or other requirements, and always together with the business unit, it's not that difficult to find the best one. And what also helps is when you meet a startup for the first time, we actually like to provide them some tasks that they have to prepare in advance so that we can discuss the results or that the business unit can dive into a deep technical discussion. And if a startup convinces us in that technical discussion, then we actually know, okay, they know what they do and we can rely on them that they're going to solve our problem.
Can you share a little bit more about that focus and how it's actually translated into execution?
Yeah, so I think obviously my team are investors, so I think me coming in and saying, team, we're going slow in order to go fast. I said to the team, I'm here to make sure that our strategy is aligned to the business, but we're protected to kind of operate. So some of the tangible things, what does that look like? I think firstly, it was a very clear Fund 2 mandate, which is reflective of what the team believed we needed to be successful, as well as aligned to the business. And that was a lot of deep work went into, okay, not just where does BAT want to invest, but where are the investable spaces within the categories we're supporting? Because marrying BAT's wishes with actually where investors are putting their capital could be two different things. And lots of scientific work went behind the different territories. Again, marrying the art and the science of the two different worlds. So actually having a piece of paper with our Fund 2 mandate, which was the team could get behind the whole business or certain stakeholders within the business who needed to know what aware and supportive of to allow us to then execute, I think was the real big driver.
You've just watched a small sample of the golden nuggets from Corporate Venturing Insider in 2025. I am deeply grateful to every guest who shared their learnings to help raise the bar for corporate venturing in service of founders and their motherships. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being part of the Corporate Venturing Insider community.